Between trans rights and abortion rights, as well as a rapid rise in anti-immigrant sentiment, Canadian conservatives are looking more and more like the American Republican Party every day. For any Canadians that were watching this week's American election in horror, thinking, how the fuck could America possibly elect the racist, homophobic, transphobic, misogynistic fascist, don't get so high and mighty and we're better than. Because this is a bad omen for Canada. Remember that Canadian politics often follow the patterns of American politics. And in America, and evidently Canada as well, social conservatism is back on the menu. I mean, even more than the Canadian conservatives, the American Republicans aren't fiscally conservative at all, and they barely even pretend to be anymore. Trump, who under his presidency added more debt to the American economy than Obama and Bush, ran this campaign with literally one economic policy: mass tariffs, which, yeah, is nationalist protectionism, but effectively amounts to a tax on the American people, which obviously hurts people's pockets. And the rest of his campaign has just been socially divisive rhetoric about trans people, immigrants, and DEI, which is basically the new critical race theory, just a racist placeholder term for fear of people who aren't white. All of which is shit that Canadian conservatives, as of late, have been politically interested in. Some people have been calling the fringe Canadian social conservatives that believe in all the Trump shit Maple MAGA, but that's not even accurate anymore. Maple MAGA is just the mainstream conservative party. More and more of them every day are anti-trans. All of them are apparently anti-abortion, and being anti-immigrant has become so mainstream that even the Liberal Party wants a slice. This shit is fucking bleak. And if you're paying attention to the polls, if you believe the polls, if you even can believe the polls, many of which are conducted by residential school denialist Angus Reid of the Angus Reid Institute, the Conservatives are projected to win our next election. And if you're like me, you're looking at that and the results of the American election, asking one question: what the actual fuck? Like, how can this happen? Well, it's because shit fucking sucks. The material conditions of the working class are horrible right now. Everything is expensive. Wages are low. People can't afford shit. Like, the vast majority of people are struggling. So, what's the solution? Fascism, duh. Okay, chill, I'm kidding. But in all honesty, there is a direct link between working class suffering, a logical move towards socialism, and as a result, fascists going hard to stop people from adopting socialist philosophies. It's actually why fascism arose in the first place. I'm gonna try to avoid too much actual theory here because I'm not a fucking nerd. But like, to make things really straightforward, when socialist and communist ideologies start becoming popular, which they are, just talk to any young person, there is a push from capitalism towards fascism. Because while both socialism and fascism deviate from the political status quo, capitalism can still thrive under fascism, something it can't do under socialism and communism. So capitalists, the ultra-rich, are like, well, let's prop up fascism, because at least then we can still keep exploiting people and making money. Maintaining capitalism means the continued exploitation of the working class, which means more money for the corporate system. And in the past decade or so, people have sort of kind of started waking up to the fact that we're all just constantly getting fucked by corporations and getting tricked into competing for resources when there's more than enough to go around. Or at least there would be if the corporate oligarchs in charge of everything weren't siphoning resources from the bottom up to fund their outrageously lavish lifestyles. If you recall, about 10 years ago, the Democratic Party in the US had a socialist gaining political traction: Bernie Sanders. And since then, the push for socialism in Canada and the US, particularly among young people, has only gotten stronger. Which means the push for fascism has to get stronger too. Something we see certainly in the politics of Donald Trump in the form of ultranationalism, militarism, and most notably, the forcible oppression and scapegoating of minority groups. trans folks, immigrants, people of color, women. All issues, again, being quickly adopted in Canadian politics as well. Which is a go-to fascist strategy, because when socialists blame capitalists for shitty material conditions of the working class, and people start being convinced by that, capitalists need to blame someone else. You aren't economically suffering because of wage stagnation and poor workers' rights enforced by capitalist lobbyists. You're economically suffering because immigrants are coming over and taking all your jobs. You aren't being overtaxed to help pay for corporate welfare in the form of subsidies and tax breaks for the ultra-wealthy. You're being overtaxed to help pay for refugees, gender-affirming healthcare, DEI, and somehow this actually fucking works, particularly with working class people who are honestly just struggling and looking for someone to blame. And when the alternative party is offering nothing except more of the same status quo bullshit, the scapegoating is appealing, clearly. And that makes sense. At least it's someone to blame. It's someone's fault. It has to be. So what's the solution here? Well, to the left, and when I say the left, I'm not talking about the liberals. This is your guys' fault too. I'm talking about the true economic left, the socialists. The answer is obvious. Socialism. We need a Bernie. We don't need a Biden or a Kamala or a Justin Trudeau. We need a Bernie. We need legitimate social representation. Someone who will speak truth to power. The actual power that is making life harder for Canadians and Americans alike. Corporate interest. And call me crazy, but I'm pretty sure to oppose the interests of billionaires, we need someone who's like the opposite of the fucking billionaire being championed by other billionaires. In Canada, we actually have potential alternatives to the liberal conservative capitalism alliance. This alternative used to be the NDP, the party that got us universal healthcare in spite of universal pushback from a previously privatized system. Back when an actual socialist ran the party, a socialist running the Socialist Party. Imagine that. What a fucking concept. But since then, the party has been steadily cruising from the left towards the center, and honestly, abandoning its socialist roots. Today, credit where credit is due, I think Jagmeet Singh actually has some pretty good, pretty socialist policies. Universal dental, universal pharmacare, universal basic income. But the way the modern NDP is inextricably tied to the Liberal Party, and thus liberalism instead of socialism, is an unignorable hurdle. I think ending the supply and confidence agreement and becoming a lot more critical of the Liberal government in the past few months is a step in the right direction, but they need to go harder. The NDP needs to be an unapologetically socialist party ready to counter conservative populism with hardcore left-wing populism, which many, including myself, fear will not be the case. If the Liberals perform as poorly in the next election as they're expected to, the NDP could easily slide into the centrist spot the Liberals currently hold, be a status quo opposition, and destroy all hope for true socialist representation in Canada. And I pray to whatever God may be listening that doesn't happen. Dear Tommy Douglas, do you hear me? It's Callum. Because if that does happen, we're really fucked. Because again, capitalism, when socialism is the answer, breeds fascism. That's just the way it is. That's exactly what happened during the initial rise of fascism in 20th century Europe. One guy with a cool mustache said, "Hey guys, what about socialism?" And another guy with about 25% of the same mustache said, "No fucking way. How about fascism, but we call it socialism to appeal to the working class socialists that are fed up with all this capitalism. That way we can maintain capitalism, but repackage it as something different for all these people that are waking up to the fact that this whole system fucking sucks. And then we'll just blame some minority group for the whole thing." And that's exactly what's happening now. One old bald white man said, "Hey guys, how about we deviate from the status quo and move to socialism so we can do less capitalism?" And a less cool old bald white man said, "No fucking way. How about we deviate from the political status quo, but move to fascism so we can maintain the system of capitalism? And also, we'll blame some minority group for the whole thing. And when that happens, the opposing party putting up a pro-status quo candidate offering more of the same doesn't fucking work. It will never work. We need unapologetic socialism. And we need it bad. Without it, fascism is honestly just inevitable at this point. The people need a change, and the change will come. The question is simply, what change will come, and who will benefit?
Thank you guys for watching. If you like my videos, please consider subscribing to my Patreon and supporting the creation of them, like these very fine people, some of which are still subscribed, others have maybe decided to take a break, and others maybe just decided they don't want anything to do with it anymore, and that's cool too. In any case, thank you so much for the support. That's Brian, Cameron, Roma Army, Jillian, M, Laura Lee, Fahad, Margaret, Mike, Andy, Maya, Colleen, David, Deborah, Derek, Left of Boom, Linda, Rob, SD, Aaron, Angelique, Colin, Dean, Elaine, Faulty, Ian, Jean-Paul, Jeffrey, Jennifer, Jeff, Jody, Joshua, Lori, Mickey, Mohammed, Vern, Liz, Norma, Sarah, Stephanie, Sean, Susan, Margot, Sal, Maurice and Marion, and Yvonne. Thank you guys so much, and thank you for your patience on this one. I feel like this took me forever to do, like longer than usual. I don't know why, but I mean, that's the way it goes sometimes. Hopefully another one next week, the weekend, whenever I can get it out to you. Love you. Okay, bye.